Hi, Krista, can you hear us? Krista, are you there? Can you hear us? Krista, you may have to hit the join audio button. Oh, there. Can you hear us now, Krista? You can unmute yourself or you can just put it into the chat if you can hear us. Well, if you're there, we're just going to give folks a couple more minutes to join, and by 7:05, we'll get started.
And we're happy to take any questions beforehand, before we get rolling.
Hi, welcome. If you're just joining us, we're giving folks just a couple minutes to roll in from the waiting room. So we'll get started in just 2 minutes around 7:05. Thanks for being here. Feel free to unmute yourself and say hi, or if you have any questions, we're here, but we'll start officially at 7:05. Hi. We're going to get started in just a minute.
How are you?
You think we should just start up and let people join? Good evening. We're just giving folks another minute to join in from the waiting room, and then we're going to get started. All right, good.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thanks so much for being here with us. I'm Whitney.
And I'm Todd.
And we're excited to share with you some thoughts and reflections on nurturing yourselves with nature. And just want to appreciate you for being here. We had a lot more registrants than folks that are here right now, which is totally fine. We're excited to put this together and share it with you. But we also may have some more folks joining. We'll see. Or they might be watching the vice presidential debate. Who knows? All right. So to get started, we'd love, if you're comfortable, to ask you to just introduce yourselves. So if each person, if you could, I'll call your name, and then if you could unmute and share your name, where you are on planet Earth tonight, who you like to do adventures outdoors with. I know our focus today, we're going to talk a lot about like things you can do with other people and with children specifically to encourage them to build a connection to the natural world. So we'd love to know if there are people in your life that you're excited to share this with. And then something fun, one fun thing you like to do in nature. So I'll keep this slide up so that you can remember the questions, but would love for you to introduce yourselves if you're comfortable. And if for any reason you're not, feel free to just say pass when I call your name. Hope I pronounce it right. Can we start with Urpi, or you can tell me how to pronounce it?
It's correct. It's Urpi.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good, thanks. So can you share the answers to these questions?
Yeah, sure. My name is Urpi again, and I'm I'm here in Marina, a couple miles from some miles from Santa Cruz. I'll do usually with I'm with my toddler. He is almost 4 years old, and with my teen. So and my husband, we like to go hiking, and we have here Carmel, and we like to be in the river in
Awesome.
summer. So
Great.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
And Krista, are you there?
Yep. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Yay.
Mhm.
I'm Krista, and I'm up in Sonoma County. And I work in school gardens, and so I like sharing the outdoors with young people. But currently not so much because no school. So I try to make online lessons so the young people can do something outside. It's something to nurture themselves outside. And then I love to collect herbs and plants and make plant pressings.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
That's great.
Thanks, Krista. And Caden. Hi, Caden. Are you there?
Hey, Whitney. Yeah, I'm here. My name's Caden. I'm in Santa Cruz. I like to adventure outdoors with my partner and students. And something fun I like to do out in nature is look for salamanders.
All right.
Awesome. And we'll go next. Again, I'm Whitney, and we're in Santa Cruz, right on the west side here. And love to adventure with this guy and our 10-year-old son, Nation. And we both also have a lot of experience running programs for tons of kids. So I would also just put like all children. I love to adventure outdoors with all children. One fun thing I like to do out in nature, there are a million, you're gonna see them in the slideshow, but one new thing I like to do is go on bike rides.
Yeah, so I'm Todd, and yeah, same. My adventure partners are the same. And I just love, going out looking for birds, looking for mushrooms, just getting time to be out there and kind of soak it all in, and yeah, spend time in the ocean. Great.
Great.
Yeah, so
John, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight, and yeah, we're excited to share some stuff. A lot of this is going to be aimed at sharing how to get kids interested in it, and I think that I hope that was in the
It was.
it was advertised in that way, but also since I think we all have a kid in us still, these things are fun to do as adults too. So
Before we move on, John, I know you were just here to launch us. Do you want to introduce yourself, or are you heading out?
I'll introduce myself, but I'm gonna have to head out and prepare another talk. But I'm John, and I adventure with my son, and I think we're blessed to be here in the Monterey Bay area for the mountains and the oceans and the parks.
Awesome. Thanks, John. All right. Todd, this is you.
So yeah, we're going to talk about what, before we start going into the details, it's always nice to start with the why, right? What are the benefits of spending time in nature? And we all know on a personal level that most of us feel much better when we spend time in nature. And what's really interesting is now a lot of research is coming out that actually being out in nature is really helpful, and it's helpful for kids in a learning situation, but also it's just really good for us in general. So we're going to put in the chat a link to this article that, in case you're reading later, it's kind of gives some neat ideas about some of the research that's going on, and is it actually helpful or not. And we're going to talk about some of those benefits.
I did not plan this well.
Okay, we'll get in there in a minute.
Yeah.
But how do I just drive like this? Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things is nature relieves stress. So you're going to see a lot of pictures of the person we love to spend time in nature with. This is our 10-year-old son. We actually have a picture of him like this in the flowers when he was a little baby, so he was reliving a moment right there. But I think many of us go out to nature to feel the just how good it feels to be relieved from stress. One of the things they talk about in the article is natural settings seem to foster warmer, more cooperative relationships. I love this quote by the folk singer Greg Brown. He says, "People say small things in small spaces." And I know as a family, we often feel that. We will be stuck inside for a long time, and I feel like we're all kind of just start like barking at each other a little bit, and then we'll go outside and go for a walk, and then all of a sudden everyone feels way better. And I just love this picture on the left of these middle school students, you know, that you can see how close they're sitting to each other, and just how relaxed they all look. You know, you think of average kids sitting in a middle school lunchroom. I don't know if they feel the same way as they do here, but it's really neat.
I'll do it.
So, of course, time outdoors is tied to higher levels of physical activity and fitness, and which is, you know, once we get out and move around, we always feel better. You sit inside all day feeling kind of stagnant, and we get to get outside and move around, and it just feels great. Also, they talk a lot about how nature has a rejuvenating effects on attention, especially if you've been stuck inside, like I said, looking at a screen, and you just feel tired, and then you go outside, and that expansiveness really kind of opens us up. This one, natural environments encourage creative, self-directed play. So this is a shot of a tree in Pescadero Marsh, and many kids know this tree as Eudora, this eucalyptus tree. But I've been there many times with kids, and I'll just bring them there. And I've never had any kid say while we were there, you know, like, when can we leave? Actually, it's the opposite. When we go to leave, they say like, oh, can we stay a little bit longer? And mostly what they're doing is just playing, making up games, just having a great time at this spot, because it's just such a easy climbable tree for even really small people. All right, so a big part of our talk tonight is how do we get kids excited about spending time in nature? And yeah, we're gonna go right into it.
So one of the kind of tenets that guides us when we're thinking about that, about how to help kids feel really excited about being out in nature, is to connect to what we call their childhood passions. And Todd and I took a class with John Young about 20 years ago, and he's a local naturalist who teaches a lot about this idea. That basically, you know, if we're just like, we're gonna go on a hike and let's go get some exercise, follow me, that's not necessarily very compelling to kids. But if we can connect to things that they love to do, that they have this intrinsic drive to do, and we can connect that with the outdoor environment, then they're more likely to be really excited to be out there. So I want you to take a minute to just think of some things that you liked to do as a child, and especially things you liked to do that translate well to the outdoors. So, you know, like playing Pac-Man, for example, would not be very relevant to this, but if you liked to play tag as a kid, or that kind of thing, if you liked to do something like that, I want you to think of all the things that you really liked to do as a child. And do you think we should do the breakout rooms or just do it in the chat? I think
yeah.
it's a small enough group, just chat.
Sure.
What do you think?
Well, it's nice if people get a chance to talk with each other.
We're gonna, what we wanna do is we're gonna put you into breakout rooms for just a minute with one other person. And I want you to just share together, make a list as long as you can. What were some of those things that you really liked to do as a child? And then we're gonna come back and we're gonna share those out and look at how we can apply those outdoors. So I need to stop my screen share. You're just gonna have like a minute or two with one other person. Introduce yourself and talk about all the things you really liked to do as a kid. And break.
Let's see if John is going to be in there. That's good. Oh. Let's see if they're joining. You can go into them.
Orpy, are you still there with us? than 60 seconds.
You know what you can do is,
Okay, is that okay with you? I want them to know what they're doing. I think clear. They'll come in when they want, but it tells them. 60 seconds.
we're all back.
All right, welcome back. All right, so we'd love if you're up for it, if you could just mute and share a couple of the things that came up for you that you liked to do as a kid. Caden, are you there? Can we start with you?
Yeah, definitely. I was just talking about how everything I like to do is outside, and I think that's where I get a lot of the passion from. And I was always a very rambunctious kid, wanting to like climb on things, and yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And Krista, how about you?
I was saying I really loved playing in the creeks when they flooded. And it was probably, some of the things I did were very unsupervised and probably somewhat dangerous if I had my adult hat on, but they were really fun.
That's awesome, thank you. And Urpi, I'm not sure, are you there? Okay, I think she stepped away for a little bit. All right, so now we're gonna look at how we can kind of tap into those childhood passions to connect kids to nature.
Yeah, so we'll talk just for a minute. You know, there's so many. If you start to make a list, you know, think about the things the kids naturally love to do that you see kids doing all over. Things like hide and seek, tag, rhyming games, scary stories, and some of them, you know, maybe not all kids were into it, and you know, some were, but we're going to talk about some of the ones that we've found to be really, really useful. So for instance, the first one, shelter building. Kids all over make shelters, even in apartments. You know, they'll use, you know, blankets and pillows, all kinds of things to make different shelters. So that's definitely one that we love to tap into. And it's actually a useful thing if you teach them how to make a good shelter. You know, maybe someday it could help them. But whenever I've done shelter building with kids, if you set it up the right way and really let them kind of direct a lot of it, you know, give them a few pointers and show them how to do it safely, of course, then let them go. They will just go crazy. And if you look at the picture on the right, there's a kid kind of running away from the shelter. And that's because I've just told them, you know, they have 5 minutes to finish their shelter. And then we're going to come around and check and see which ones are waterproof with the little spray bottle. And they are so excited to get it done. And that's actually a field trip for fifth graders, local school. And I mean, they're just running all over the place. And I've had all the teachers always come up afterwards and I said, I wish they were that excited, you know, to do their work at school. But shelter building is a great passion that it's really fun to do with kids. Another one that really translates well, you know, a lot of times when we're out in nature, we see animals or birds, we want to get a close look, you know, and sometimes with kids, you know, they'll just like run up and scared away. So oftentimes I'll say, hey, let's see how close we can get without scaring away. And here's some kids on the beach sneaking up, trying to get as close to the seagulls as possible. Another one, you know, that a lot of kids really love, and adults too, is just looking for critters. So, you know, wherever we go, and depending on the time of year, there's usually something that we can look for. And, you know, of course, we show kids how to do it in a safe way, in a way that's not going to harm the little critters. But it really, it's anytime I'm at a creek, if I say, hey, does anyone want to look for crawdads or crayfish? Right away, it's like everyone's bought in. Or salamanders, or yeah. Creek walks, which is one of the things I think was mentioned. Yep, going on fun creek walks. Playing hide and seek. So later we'll talk a little bit about some of the core routines of nature connection, and one of them being like the sit spot. Well, a lot of kids don't necessarily want to sit quietly for long periods of time out in nature. But as soon as you start playing hide and seek games, they'll get quiet really fast and they love to hide. And here's a couple kids who are like using some advanced camouflage skills to hide during one of the games we were playing. Sitting around a campfire, of course, with a campfire, we have to be able, you have to do it in a really safe way and know when's a good time and when's not a good time, especially here in California this time of year. But many times I got my son to go out into the forest on a rainy day because I said, hey, we can like maybe cook a marshmallow or make some hot cocoa or something, if you can do it, like I said, safely. Oops. So basically, any kind of scavenger hunt, anytime when you're going out and looking for something, so going mushroom hunting, and a lot of times what I'll do is, I'll talk about the possibility of seeing a certain mushroom. For instance, this little green and yellow mushroom is a parrot mushroom, and I'll tell the kids, the parrot mushroom, I'll describe it and I'll say it's really hard to find. You're really lucky if you find one, and we'll go and look for it. And they just love that whole idea that, oh, we might find something rare. So looking for mushrooms here. You can see this girl has in her hand some candy caps, which are some of the edible mushrooms that you can find around here that are really neat. And they smell like maple syrup. And then our son is holding a king boletus edulis, which is porcini mushroom, one of the edible mushrooms that people love to find around here. But just having a purpose, going out and looking for something, really can get kids excited. Face painting, or just any kind of like, this gets into like, a lot of kids, a childhood passion is like putting on costumes or playing characters. Like when I was a kid, kids played like cops and robbers and all these other things, right? But something about like just painting your face and putting on a mask. So here we're using sedimentary rocks to do a little bit of face painting. Looking for treasures. We still do this as a family. We go down to the beach and we'll look for beach glass or shells. But it's pretty, like I always see adults down there doing the same thing. Lots of different types of earth art. Yeah, so I just want to actually, before we go on, there's so many other core routines, childhood passions that you can tap into. And by looking at some of the ones that we give examples of, I'm wondering if anyone, wants to chime in on any others that they thought of that might be fun to do with kids. All right. If at any point anyone wants to unmute and chime in, we have such a small group that you feel free if you want to add anything or ask a question. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But we're going to continue on. So, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So what we just shared were a lot of kind of activity ideas that connect really well to childhood passions. And what we want to share next are just some core routines that you could do really anytime you go out into nature with kids or as an adult. So this doesn't have to be like a one-time activity. This could be like, yeah, every time we go out there. Each of these is that we're going to share in a minute is a routine that kind of builds your muscle memory and builds your connection to nature. So as we do these over time, and we've seen this with our son and also with kids we work with in programs, as we do these week after week or month after month over time, it develops sort of a strong root of nature connection. So Todd will share a few of those.
And yeah, so while we share these, of course, we're always starting from that child perspective. What are the things that kids want to do? Like Whitney said before, if you just say, hey, let's go for a big long hike, or if you tell a kid, like if I sit, during one of our summer camps, if I said, hey, who wants to go run laps? Like who wants to go run? Like no one would say they wanted to run. But if I say, hey, who wants to play this really fun tag game? Like in a few minutes, they'll all be running like crazy all over the place because they have a reason to do it. So same, before we go into these nature connection routines, like we're coming at it from the child's perspective, like what do they want to do anyways? Like if we weren't there, if we just let them be outside by themselves, what would the things that they would do if we just got out of the way? And many times we just have to get out of the way. But these are some of the things that will help create a deeper connection for all of us. And I just want to talk about this quote before we move on. Lose your mind and come to your senses. So John Young said that, and I really love that, because often when we go out in nature, we're just walking, we're thinking, and we're just stuck in our heads thinking about our life. And he's like, no, stop thinking, connect to your senses, come into the moment. And the theme of this talk, heal yourself with nature. This is really where the rejuvenation comes, right? When you can quiet your mind and when you can really step into the moment and start to expand your senses, that's when you're really going to feel the rejuvenating effects of nature. And we're going to talk about some of those routines that will help. So before we go out, of course, you have to know your local hazards. It's really good to know what are your local hazards. So I listed a few for us here. We think about poison oak. And so, I'll talk a lot about poison oak. I'll have kids find poison oak. I'll show them how to identify it, the difference between blackberry and poison oak, make sure that they can tell the difference. But even then, once we've done that, a whole bunch of that, I'm still very, very aware of every time we pass poison oak, because I know that they don't have the attention yet to find it. Even though they can now maybe differentiate it, they're going to be thinking about other things, and they're not going to maybe notice it. So I'm always looking out for poison oak. We also have stinging nettle around here. Yellow jackets, certain time of years, this could be a real problem, especially in the redwoods. You got to be careful. And then ticks. So I show kids, how to look where ticks hang out and how to remove them with tweezers safely if you do get a tick. So know your local hazards first, right? You want everyone to come back safe and having a good time. So one of the first things we want to do is when we get out in nature is try to slow down. How do we slow down and take the time to notice all the life forms around us? And when we walk through the forest quickly, it's actually hard, for our attention to take in everything. But the minute we start to slow down and expand our senses, then we can start to really notice things. So with kids, they might not want to slow down. They might want to run. And so I was like, all right, let's run. And then when they get tired, I'm like, okay, now let's slow down. And we often play games that get them to practice what we call a fox walk, where they're learning how to walk quietly and slowly. Or we do like balancing games. Like here, some of the kids are closing their eyes trying to balance across this log. So probably one of the best core routines that you could do to really nurture your nature connection is having a sit spot, a place, not just every time you go out for a hike, finding a place to sit and listen. That's a great thing to do. But really here we're talking about finding your own special spot that you can go to a lot in nature and that you can notice the changes. And if you go to that spot again and again, and you start to recognize the different plants and the different birds that are coming and going, and you start to notice the tracks and the sign that are being left by animals, pretty soon you create a relationship with that spot. And as you develop that relationship, you notice more and more, and you feel like you get to know your neighbors more, like, oh, wow, like every time I come here, there's a towhee in that same spot. Oh, wait, maybe that's the same towhee, and you start to recognize the individuals and create a deep connection. And I really feel like it's through that deep connection that we get nourished. But at the same time, then you feel this sense of responsibility for that place, right? And you really learn to love and care for it and want to become a caretaker of that spot. So we always encourage people to listen to the birds and to the sounds of nature. And we call it listening for bird language, but I'll teach kids how to put up their deer ears, like they put cup their hands behind their ears so they can hear a little bit better. And we'll listen for the sounds of nature. And here's two examples. On the left, you can see a picture of a great horned owl. And we only saw it, this was really high up. We only saw it because this the scrub jay was very unhappy that it was sitting there. And so we listened to the jay, we heard the jay like squawking, and we thought, oh, it was early in the morning. And so we thought maybe there's an owl up there, and sure enough, there was. The picture on the right is a really neat, that's bobcat kitten. What had happened is I was taking a group of kids down to a creek. It was the time of year that we could look for little baby turtles in this creek. And so we were on our way down this trail to the creek, but there's a trail that branched off to the left, and down that trail, I could hear some bird alarms, like cheek, 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 like really upset. And so I had everyone stop and put up their ears and listen. And I was like, does anyone hear that? And everyone could hear it. And I said, do those birds sound happy or upset? And they're like, yeah, it sounds upset. And I was like, does anyone want to go see if we can see what's upsetting it? And they're like, yeah, let's go check it out. And so we went down, and we were like looking around and where the birds were calling from. And all of a sudden one of the kids said, hey, there's a little cat in that tree. And then I looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a little bobcat kitten. And so we all got to see it, and one of the parents took a picture of it. So there's a lot of opportunities when you really start to listen to the sounds of nature while you're out there. So another thing we like to do is use what we call wide angle vision, or owl eyes. But basically, instead of being kind of tunnel vision, we try to use our peripheral vision and expand our awareness. So we notice things out of the corner of our eye, little movement. We really look for movement. And when you notice the movement out of the corner of your eye, then you can like look carefully in tunnel vision and see what it is. And one day I saw a little movement out of the corner of my eye, and I saw this little turkey up on the hillside, which I don't think I would have noticed if I hadn't been in wide angle vision, and it was pretty cute. So I took a few pictures. We also love to look for natural mysteries. Oftentimes we find things like on the left, we found this pellet out in a field, and we were looking at the pellet and trying to decipher. We could see there was some hair in there and some bones, and there was something else in it, and I recognized what it was, but I didn't. Often we won't tell the students what we found, or whoever we're with, and try to let them figure out what it is. And I was asking them, has anybody seen anything like this before? And not too long after it, on the trail, we found another smashed Jerusalem cricket on the trail. Someone had like stepped on it or rode it over on a bike, and we were looking at it, and then someone remembered, hey, that looks like the thing that we saw in the pellet. And it turns out that a lot of owls and even hawks will eat Jerusalem crickets, and you can find them in their pellets. So anytime you find some kind of mystery, asking a bunch of great questions and trying to figure out what it is can be a really fun thing to do. When we do find those mysteries, we like to ask questions that promote observations, curiosity, and connections. So maybe you probably heard of these before, but for me, like if you hadn't and you took away anything from this talk, these 2 questions can open up so many doors to get people more interested and to notice more. So the first one is, what do you notice? So does anyone want to say what they notice in this first, in this picture of the tracks? So things like, I notice there's a bunch of little dots or something.
I noticed there's a bunch of dots on top of the tracks.
Yes. Anything else?
Maybe I noticed claws
Yes,
at the top of the track.
definitely. Good eye. What about, how many fingers do you notice?
5.
Yeah. So I don't know. Can you see my cursor?
There's a little arrow.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, great. So if we look, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. almost looks like a little hand, and we can see some claws. And we could spend a bunch of time going just into this one little mystery, right? Like I noticed that this left track looks different than this right track because, one of these is a front track and one of these is a rear track. And we could ask more and more questions and really dive into this mystery. Does anyone know who these tracks are from?
Are they raccoon tracks?
Yeah, these are raccoon tracks. So that question, what do you notice, can be used with plants, when you're trying to differentiate a plant or learn a new plant, or with a whole area, like what do you notice in this area? It's just a great way to spark observations and get people to connect to the moment. The next question we love to ask is, what do you wonder, or what questions do you have about this? So here we have those same raccoon tracks, but you can see something happened, and so people start to come up with questions. Does anyone have any questions? Something they wonder about this picture?
I guess I wonder if the digging is related to the tracks that go on the sides of it.
Yeah, so because I was here, I could look carefully and notice that those tracks were the same. And so, some of the questions we started coming up with, the people I was with, the kids I was with, were like, why was it digging? What was it digging for? Was it digging for food? What kind of food could be in the sand right here? This is up by Pescadero Creek. And so what we did was just a little ways away from there, we started digging down and trying to find anything in the sand. And sure enough, not far from there, we could find little sand crabs. And so then we started wondering, oh, maybe it was digging up those little sand crabs. And then the last one we like to ask is, what does it remind you of? And this one I use less, but in certain situations, like this plant, does this remind you, I always say, does this remind you of something you've seen in your garden? And, many kids will be like, oh yeah, that reminds me of strawberry. And I'm like, yeah, well, this is a wild strawberry. So those are, what do you notice? What do you wonder? And what does it remind you of, our three favorite questions? So some other things to do as far as nature connection and routines is take advantage of the season. If what's going on, what's happening ecologically? I love that question. Like when are we ecologically speaking, right? Is it the time of year that we're looking for mushrooms? Are the wildflowers going off? Are birds singing, right? In the springtime. Our family loves to go look for vernal pools after the rains come. These pools that frogs love to lay their eggs in, and because there's no fish, right? The fish aren't going to come eat them. But the problem with the vernal pools around here is that they often dry up before the tadpoles finish developing. But when they do, you get to see like this little Pacific chorus frog. Also, is it the time of year that the salamanders are close to the surface that you can carefully turn over logs and look for. So take advantage of the season. A great routine is keep a nature journal, and in the journal, like we often, encourage people to make observations, but also write down the questions that you have about it. Here you can see one of my students writing down some of the questions they found about a flower. And they use both drawings, but also written words. Sometimes it's easier just to write like sharp spines than it is to show it, depending on your artistic ability. But keeping a nature journal also just helps you make deeper observations if you journal a plant or a flower or anything like that. Make up your own field guides. So this is really great for kids. If they've made their own field guide to tracking or to a local area, they're going to be so much more invested in going out there and using that field guide. And then just the art of making it makes you learn more about your local area. And yeah, it's a really neat thing to do. Make relationships with the plants and trees by working with them. So here on the left, those are green redwood cones that were basically put in warm water and we're using to make a redwood cone tie-dye. And there's a student, we made a little, like a, what was it called? Like a saxophone or something out of,
Horn.
yeah, out of a piece of bull kelp that had washed up. So I love the anthropologist Kat Anderson. She really talks about how important it is for us to remake those relationships with the plants, and that we only can do that by using them, you know, in a good way, by interacting with them in a good way, in a responsible way, but making deep relationships with them. This is one of my students giving a presentation. She had was working with natural dyes, and these are the different natural dyes that she had, the different plants she used, and she learned a lot about the different plants by making dyes out of them and dyeing wool. One fun thing we've done with kids is make tule boats. So a lot of times you can find local landowners that have a piece of water and tule is taking over, and they actually want some of it removed. And so that's a really fun activity, you know, and some of our tule boats have worked better than others, but even the ones that didn't work very well, the kids just have so much fun trying them out. Harvest edible plants, of course, please be careful, but you know, these are some of our favorites. Nettles have to be harvested carefully and cooked well, but very delicious and nutritious if cooked right. Miner's lettuce, and down on the right, you can see a little yerba buena and some wild strawberry, and yerba buena makes great tea. And it's really fun to make tea with kids, you know, harvest plants and make tea with them, and they just love it. We also love to work on survival skills, fire by friction, making stone tools. I make bows a lot with kids, and that is always a great hit. There's a picture of a kid with a camelback. You can see he made like a huge, we learned how to make natural cordage one day, and he went home and made like this thing that was long enough for like 6 or 7 people to jump rope over it. So survival skills. But most importantly is just making every day an adventure, and having tons of fun. And yeah, like kind of letting the kids direct the play, and following their ideas, you know, if it's safe, obviously. And we're gonna put a link also to a fun scavenger hunt that you can go out and do, or go out and do with some friends. And then, you know, once you've done a scavenger hunt like this is for our area, but you know, there's things like banana slugs. You might not have banana slugs where you live, but you can kind of make a similar one, and then it's great fun for kids to do. And usually when I do field trips, I know when we get to a new area, kids want to go, and that's the first thing they want to do is they just want to go out and explore. And so often I'll say, yeah, let's go out and explore here. You know, let's get in a small groups, and I'll give you this scavenger hunt, and just go on out and see if you can find these things. And it gives them a chance to do what they wanted to do anyways, but it gives them some focus, and it's pretty fun. So yeah.
I think that's everything that we wanted to share, and we're happy to stick around if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, or if you know you have something you have worked well that you would like to share, we'd love to hear it. Yeah.
And otherwise, I think we just want to thank you so much for joining us.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For the sit spots, how long do you usually have the kids sit in their sit spots?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, because I am thinking about what kids want to do anyways, I'm often afraid to do sit spots. And so like with little kids, I might, you know, introduce a game where they're, you know, like camouflage, if you've ever played that with kids, where they're like hiding and I'm looking for them. And then I find one and the other ones get quiet, you know, and I think of introducing it in ways like that. But actually what I found, especially if you do a long program out, like you're out there for a few hours or all day with kids, that they actually crave having a little time by themselves. You know, what we call intrapersonal time, where they get to just be by themselves, whether it's like a little journaling activity they're doing at their sit spot. But I just kind of feel it out for the group, you know. It's like for me, 10 minutes might feel like a long time. And when they get back, I'll always ask them, you know, was that too long? Did you want more time? And just kind of feel. And often they say, I wish we had more time. You know, maybe there's a few that don't, but It's just really dependent on the age and how deep, because I worked with some kids, I would just meet for one day, but I had other groups, like a homeschool group, I worked with some of the kids for 8 years. And so by the end, those kids could go and happily sit for 25 minutes, which, if you're learning like bird language and stuff, you have to sit for more than 10 minutes just to get everything to calm down, like you disturbed the area when you walked in, and after about 10 to 15 minutes, it kind of goes back to what we call baseline. And then you start to notice more activity and stuff coming in as you get quiet. But I would just I always am monitoring my group, and seeing like, did they seem like a group that would benefit from sit spot? I don't know if that answers your question, but.
I'll just add to that I've seen Todd, and I've done it too, with groups that we haven't worked with for a really long time, or that might be reluctant to sit by themselves for 10 minutes or might feel bored. When he talked about playing camouflage, I've seen him do it where he'll say like camouflage and everyone goes and hides. And then he'll like look around, and to me, it's very obvious, like you can see that girl, she's sitting right there, right? But he'll like keep looking, like as if he can't see her. And it's so that she'll just hang out there for a little while longer. And so he's like looking, acting like he's really, and then as soon as they get restless, as soon as the kids start like, he's like, I see you. And then all the other kids are like, and then they kind of sit still for another minute. I see you. And so that's kind of a fun way, if they're just unfamiliar, to kind of get them started with sitting quietly for a couple minutes without them even realizing that that's part of what they're doing.
Yeah, or like I said, giving them like some kind of journaling activity, like to sketch a plant or
a sound map.
Yeah,
where
make
they
a
do
sound map.
a map of every sound they hear. They try to draw where it is on the map, something to kind of keep them focused.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Or anything you want to share? Anyone wants to share?
I'm going to use the field guide activity, having them make their own field guide. That was really cool.
Awesome. And you said you work in school gardens, and so you can also do that in a garden setting. And I've even seen school gardens where this is like another layer, but where the students make little videos, and then when you walk through the garden, there's a QR code. So you could go up to a bed and then you click on it, and on your phone comes the video of the student saying, welcome, this is our pizza bed, and let me explain it to you. And so they can do drawn field guides, and they can also do like interpretation that way of a whole garden space.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anything else, or anything from Krista? Well, thank you all so much. It's been nice spending the evening with you, thinking about nurturing ourselves with nature. Have a good evening.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.